Dr. Baliga here. This podcast is on colchicine in COVID-19, the results of the GRECCO-19 Randomized clinical trial. The first author is Dr. Deftereos, MD, and the GRECCO-19 investigators are from Greece. The results of the study are published in JAMA Open Network 2020, June 24th. In an earlier podcast, I discussed the utility of colchicine based on anecdotal evidence from my good friend and colleague, Dr. Lloyd Vincent, the director of the Africa Care Network, where he has over 20 patients on hemodialysis treated with colchicine without a single mortality. But this was anecdotal evidence. This trial is a randomized trial, but is not double-blind. It was a small study with only over 100 patients because the severity of COVID-19 decreased and there wasn't a bigger population to study this drug. In the West and other countries, unlike lower and middle-income countries, anti-inflammatory drugs, IL-6 inhibitors like tocilizumab, are affordable, but in Africa and other lower and middle-income countries, colchicine is affordable because it is generic. It has a favorable safety profile in other conditions including gout, rheumatic disease, familial Mediterranean fever, and colchicine works from a different mechanism compared to dexamethasone, other steroids, or non-steroidal anti-inflammatory agents. It, in fact, inhibits microtubule formation during cell division in metaphase. It inhibits neutrophil chemotaxis and activity in response to vascular injury. It inhibits inflammasome signaling and reduces the production of active interleukin-1 beta. It reduces neutrophil platelet interaction and aggregation and has a rapid onset of anti-inflammatory effects when the standard regimen or the oral regimen of colchicine is used in gout, that is 1.2 milligrams initially, followed by 0.6 milligrams every hour for 6 hours or until severe GI symptoms like nausea, vomiting, diarrhea occur. Colchicine is derived from the plant Colchicum autumnale that was used for joint swelling as early as 2000 BC and was first used to treat gout in the 6th century. It was initially approved by the FDA in October 2009 for the treatment of gout and familial Mediterranean fever. Given that the COVID-19 syndrome comprises of inflammation of several organs, including the inflammation of the vascular endothelium, triggering microemboli, thromboemboli, and its consequent effects, the hope for colchicine in lower and middle income countries. So what did the GRECCO-19 randomized clinical trial investigators look for? Their question was, is the receipt of colchicine among patients hospitalized with symptomatic coronavirus 2019 associated with clinical benefit? They enrolled 105 patients hospitalized with COVID-19 in a 1-in-1 allocation from April 3rd to April 27, 2020 to either standard medical therapy or colchicine with standard medical therapy. So this colchicine was in addition to other standard therapy for COVID-19 at that time. The study took place in 16 tertiary hospitals in Greece. Colchicine was administered 1.5 milligrams loading dose followed by 0.5 milligrams after 60 minutes and maintenance doses of 0.5 milligrams twice daily with standard medical treatment for as long as 3 weeks. What were the main outcomes and measures? Primary endpoints were 1. maximum high sensitivity cardiac troponin level. 2. Time for CRP, that is C-reactive protein, to reach more than 3 times the upper reference limit. And third, time to deterioration by 2 points on a 7-grade clinical status scale ranging from able to resume normal activities to mortality. Secondary endpoints were 1. Percentage of participants requiring mechanical ventilation. 2. All-cause mortality. And 3. Number, type, severity, and seriousness of adverse events. The primary efficacy analysis was performed on an intention to treat basis. So there were 105 patients enrolled in the study. 58.1% were men, that is 61 were men. Median interquartile range for age was 54 to 76. The median was 64 years old, so older patients, with 50 patients, that is 47.6, randomized to the control group, and 55 patients, that is 52.4%, to the colchicine group. Median peak high sensitivity cardiac troponin values were 0.0112 nanograms per ml in the control group and 0.008 nanograms per ml in the colchicine group. P-value was not significant at 0.34. Median interquartile range maximum CRP was 1.4 to 8.9. So the median was 4.5 milligrams per deciliter versus 3.1 milligrams per deciliter. P-value again was not significant, 0.73. The clinical primary endpoint rate was 14% in the control group, 7 out of 50 patients, and 1.8%, that is 1 out of 55 patients, with an odds ratio of 0.11, 95% confidence interval was 0.01 to 0.96, and the p-value was 0.02. Mean event-free survival time was 18.6 days in the control group versus 20.7 days in the colchicine group, and the log rank P was 0.03. Adverse events were similar in both groups except for diarrhea, which was more frequent in the colchicine group than the control group. That is 25 patients versus 9 patients. P-value was 0.003. So what did the investigators conclude? In this randomized clinical trial, participants who received colchicine had a statistically significant improvement time to clinical deterioration. There was no significant differences in high sensitivity cardiac troponin T or CRP. They did say that these findings should be interpreted with caution. This study therefore does suggest that there is a significant clinical benefit from colchicine in hospitalized COVID-19 patients. The definition of clinical deterioration used in the study, 2 grades on the ordinal clinical scale, is highly relevant because it essentially translates to a change in clinical condition requiring invasive or non-invasive respiratory support, mechanical respiratory support, or mortality. However, intriguingly, high sensitivity troponin levels were not significantly different between the two groups, while the cardiac troponin increase overall was low to modest, far below what is seen in patients with acute coronary syndromes or myocarditis. C-reactive protein levels were also not significantly different between the two groups. This could be explained by enrollment after a median of 3.5 days of hospitalization and concurrent administration of other anti-inflammatory drugs such as chloroquine or azithromycin in both groups. There was an attenuated D-dimer increase in patients treated with colchicine versus those in the control arm, which suggests both an anti-inflammatory and an anti-thrombogenic effect. Although this finding may be a random observation, the reported results are of an exploratory nature given that D-dimer levels were not part of the initial list of study endpoints. Studies among patients with familial Mediterranean fever, however, suggest that colchicine may in fact have such an effect, and it may be mediated by colchicine's anti-inflammatory properties on the endothelium. The potential of colchicine is exciting news for patients in lower and middle income countries who cannot afford the novel anti-inflammatory drugs such as anti-IL-6 inhibitors such as tocilizumab, anti-IL-1 inhibitors, anti-interferons, and complement-mediated anti-inflammatory drugs. In an accompanying elegant editorial, Rabbani et al. Discuss the benefits and limitations of the GRECCO-19 trial. First, as previously described, the study allowed for co-treatment with other investigational agents. Nearly all patients received hydroxychloroquine and azithromycin. 1/3 received lopinavir or ritonavir. 1/2 received anticoagulation therapy, and none received remdesivir. Although no significant differences were observed between the two groups in the use of these therapies, this extensive co-treatment makes the study less generalizable. Secondly, the trial sample size was small, combined with a low event rate, makes this data underpowered and hypothesis generating. Nevertheless, the results of GRECCO-19 trial suggest colchicine is safe and may improve outcomes in patients with COVID-19. Look forward to the other 14 trials listed in clinicaltrials.gov, including the COL-Corona trial, which is the colchicine coronavirus SARS-CoV-2 trial conducted at UCSF, NYU, and in Montreal, and the COL-Heart-19 trial, which is the colchicine for treatment of cardiac injury in hospitalized patients with COVID-19.